Today I'm making a potatoes au gratin using Italian Asiago and Philadelphia cream cheese. So I hope you enjoy, and we'll start now. So these are some easy things I've already prepared. They're relatively simple, can be found around the house. So this is about 2 tablespoons of flour, 2 teaspoons of thyme, that's just my preference. I have about a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of pepper. I just mixed it in. I also have about 1 entire package of cubed Philadelphia cream cheese. I just warmed it up, room temperature, cut it into cubes, just makes it simpler. And also 2 tablespoons of butter. Again, just having this on hand, already ready to go to put in the pot, just makes life so much easier. So I already prepped that. And about 2 potatoes, pretty large Yukon Gold potatoes, sliced super thin. I cooked the potatoes for maybe 3 or 5 minutes, boiled them quickly, just to make sure they were slightly cooked, a little less starch, just makes it easier to cook in the oven later. So, thin potato. Salted the thing, and I'm going to have 2 cups of half and half. I use fat-free. To me, it doesn't make a difference. Right now, this is 1 cup. I just throw in the other one when I put it in the pot. So these are mainly my general recipes. My extra toppings include Asiago. So I have about 1.5 cups I grated by hand, just Italian Asiago. It's a pretty soft cheese if you get it right. And just a whole bunch of chives in general. I usually just do a grouping, whatever fits in a little tiny fistful of my hand. You can do more, you can do less. You don't have to finely chop it. I rough chop. It's up to your preference, how much chives you like or not. So that's what I've already gotten prepared, and I'm going to set up to put them in the pot now to start the sauce. Okay, so here we are, and I'm about to put all the ingredients in the pot. Make sure that's on. Now we're going to work on the pot. So the ingredients we're going to need to put in the pot here are the flour mixture, the butter, the half and half, the cheese, and of course, the cream cheese. Now, don't forget, so you want like a medium heat, you don't want it too high. For mine, it's like a 5. It's a little high still, but not too high. So I'm going to add the half and half one, and I'm going to pour the second. I do a little less than a full cup on the second time, 3/4, maybe a half. And then I'm going to add, of course, the butter. So you just want to scrape those slabs in there. I just keep it in slabs because you don't want one huge hunk of butter just floating around. Just put in the flour mixture, which again is the thyme, the 2 tablespoons of flour, the salt, and the pepper. If you want, you could add paprika. Some people do. You want the spice, kick it up a notch, go ahead. So I'm also going to add the cream cheese. Put those cubes in there. Just going to get them right. And if you're like me, you're going to lick the ball. So I try and get all of it in the pot. Also, don't forget, Asiago has to go in there. You have this very odd cheese sitting on top. I tend to add more on top anyway, but you don't want it just like that. And of course, the chives. I'm just going to get them all in there. I just freeform off my cutting board here. Probably not the best way to do it, but it's definitely my way. You don't want to stir too much where it doesn't create anything, but you don't want it to burn either. This should take 1 to 2 minutes until it's like a semi-thick sauce. Like if you were making a cream sauce, like a white cream sauce or a thick gravy. So this is my sauce. So you just, as you can see, it's really creamy. It's partly the cream cheese, partly the half and half. You got the chives in there. I just throw them in there because I like them to start cooking a little before the oven. So here's my troubleshooting tip for the sauce. If it's too thin, add a little flour. Too thick, half and half works. A little milk. So if you listen to what my grandmother says, the only way to grease a dish is using butter. Well, I technically put a twist on what my grandmother says. I add a little bit of garlic in there, especially for dishes like this. A little bit of zest. In here is about a tablespoon of chopped garlic. Buy it in the grocery store in a jar already. It's cheap. And a tablespoon of butter, and I just, I don't know, broke it up into small pieces already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my dish, depending on how many potatoes you're doing at a time, depending upon how your size of the dish goes. I'm just using my Pyrex here. It's my favorite. So it's an 8x8. So put on your Ziploc or your zip bag and get ready to go. So I'm just gonna grab this garlic butter mixture just like this in my hands, and I'm gonna really rub it all into that dish. And I'm gonna probably grab more garlic too. It just adds a little bit of flavor, you know. It may not be totally noticeable. You don't want it to keep away vampires. Well, maybe you do, but either way, you definitely don't want to ward everybody off. So just about a tablespoon, and I think that's enough. Okay, so here we are. It's time to finally get these babies into this dish. Now, make sure your sauce is already done and it's just sitting on the stove, just cooling for a little bit with the cover on, so that way it thickens. That's just how I do it. I like a thick sauce. You could probably put it in right hot. It might not make too much of a difference, but to me, thick sauce means better sauce. So let it cool for 2-3 minutes while you're doing this at least. So you have your greased dish right here, full of bits of garlic and definitely butter. And you're going to take these very thin potatoes and you're just going to place them in there. As my potatoes are so thin, I'm going to do a little bit of the sauce at a time. I'm going to get a nice layer going on. Okay, so a nice layer. Probably a little bit more. You don't want it too thin, you know. People are going to be complaining. And now I'm going to get a nice big spoon, and I'm just going to ladle some of that on there. Do a little bit at a time. You don't want too much, you don't want it too thick, and I'm just going to put this down. Just put, again, some more potatoes. You're going to keep layering like this. You don't want a mush of potatoes, and you don't want too thin either. So just make sure, you know, I'm pretty sure you can trust your judgment on this here. Just layer them out. Layered them out again. A couple more spoonfuls of this delicious sauce. At least in my opinion is. I know a couple other opinions definitely is too, so it's not just me hallucinating. Shake it a little. Now there's a lot of sauce here. I can do another pretty thick layer, and potatoes generally absorb part of this sauce as they're cooking, so don't be too worried if you think you have too much sauce and not enough potato. You'll be fine. In there. And the last bit of the sauce. I want to get all that sauce in there. Look at all that. Could probably work this with a cheddar cheese as well, but I like Asiago, so that's what I stuck with. So I'm going to shake. You don't want to shake it all over yourself, though it is delicious. Don't want to do that. Sometimes you need to cheat, use the help of the spoon, especially when it gets a little thicker like this. There we are. Okay, so I like to top it with a little bit of extra cheese. That's just my preference, so I'm just going to quickly, I'm gonna get all that cheesy goodness on there. And now we're about to put it in the oven. Now it's ready to go into the oven. So it's at 350, so we're just gonna pop it right in there. And I already have a cookie sheet in there just because my oven has a tendency to spill things. Of my oven, I'm gonna move this baby into here. So now that you've done that, it's gonna take you about an hour. Nope, that golden brown crust, that's what you're looking for. Not only that, but you're looking for fork tender potatoes, which already tested definitely are, and it's delicious. I like to end it by eating it. So I like to put a little bit of chives on top, just snips with your scissors. So doesn't that just look good? To me it does. Now I get to taste it finally, all the way. And that just is good. It's just ultra creamy and delicious.